I want to be clear about something right away. Nobody consulted me before this happened. One day I'm filling out forms for a diplomatic cultural exchange program, the kind of thing where you learn to say, thank you, in 17 different alien dialects and maybe eat some suspicious purple soup for interspecies goodwill. The next day I'm holding an acceptance letter with a campus map that includes something labeled Blood Drainage Channel, do not block during molting season. I read that line 4 times. Then I read the letterhead. It said, in large intimidating font, the Academy for Apex Predatory Species. Somewhere in a galactic administrative office, a very tired alien clerk had filed my paperwork under the wrong species code, and instead of learning polite dinner conversation, I was now enrolled in a school designed to train the galaxy's deadliest hunters. Cosmic bureaucracy, ladies and gentlemen. Truly the final boss of every civilization. My name is Kira Voss, and this is the story of how I accidentally became the most terrifying rumor on an alien campus without throwing a single punch on purpose. When the shuttle doors opened, I stepped out into a courtyard full of creatures that looked like they'd been designed by a committee that really loved teeth. 7 feet tall, on average. Claws that could open a car door like a soda can. Species with names I couldn't pronounce and skin that ranged from armored plate to something that looked suspiciously like it was still deciding whether to be scales or fur. And every single one of them stopped and stared at me. I want to say I felt afraid. I did not. I felt like the last hors d'oeuvre on a buffet table, and everyone was doing math about whether I was worth the calories. Is that the mascot? One of them said, not bothering to lower his voice. I think it's a snack, said another, sniffing the air like I was a particularly interesting sandwich. I heard they're called humans, offered a third, mangling the word so badly I almost laughed. Nobody on this campus, I would soon learn, could pronounce human correctly. It became less of a species name and more of a linguistic obstacle course. I looked at the crowd of apex predators sizing me up and did the only reasonable thing. I waved. Hi. Wrong bus, apparently. Anyone know where orientation is? The silence that followed was the good kind. The kind where several dangerous creatures collectively recalibrate their entire understanding of the universe. Orientation, as it turned out, involved a very large, very ancient predator named Headmaster Voran standing at a podium mid-speech when an aide sprinted up and whispered something in his ear. I watched his expression go from regal authority figure to man who just found out his car got towed in about 2 seconds. He excused himself, disappeared into a side room, and I distinctly heard the words, "This is a diplomatic catastrophe," through a wall that was apparently not soundproof enough for institutional secrets. Turns out, expelling me on the spot would violate the newly signed Earth Defense Compact, something involving trade routes and mutual non-aggression clauses that absolutely nobody wanted to test the boundaries of. So instead of getting quietly shipped home, I got a temporary enrollment stamp and a look from Voran that said he was already drafting his resignation letter in his head. "You will attend classes," he said through gritted fangs, "while we correct this error." "Cool," I said. "Do I get a locker?" He stared at me the way you'd stare at a Roomba that had just started reciting poetry. The combat assessment trial happened on day 1, because apparently subtlety is not a virtue at Predator Academy. The setup was simple: pair off, demonstrate lethal proficiency, get ranked. My assigned opponent was a creature named Draxus, all muscle and confidence, who looked at me the way you'd look at a parking ticket, a minor inconvenience before the real day begins. "This will be quick," he said. "Yeah, probably," I agreed, which seemed to throw him off, because apparently prey isn't supposed to agree with predators about its own upcoming demise. Here's the thing about being the weakest creature in a room full of apex hunters. You stop thinking about strength, because strength was never going to be your category. You start thinking about everything else. The terrain. The lighting. The fact that Draxus relied entirely on scent tracking and hadn't accounted for the ventilation system pumping air in a very specific direction. The fact that his species had incredible reflexes but terrible peripheral vision, something I'd clocked within about 4 seconds of watching him move. I didn't win by being strong. I won by making him chase a decoy made of my jacket and a training dummy's arm while I climbed the observation scaffolding and dropped a fire extinguisher on his head from 12 feet up. He did not see that coming. Nobody did. There was a very long pause after he hit the ground, and then somebody in the observation deck said, very quietly, "Did the Hyuman just win using janitorial equipment?" Yes. Yes, I did. Add it to my resume. Word travels fast in a school full of predators, mostly because predators love gossip almost as much as they love ripping things apart. By lunch, I was officially a topic of hushed cafeteria conversation. "It smells like fear," one student whispered to another, 2 tables over, apparently forgetting predators also have excellent hearing, but it acts like it owns the building. I sat alone with my tray of something that was probably food, and that's when Threxa showed up. Threxa was the kind of predator that other predators got out of the way for. Sharp-featured, armored, with a reputation for being undefeated in every sanctioned duel since she'd enrolled. She slammed both hands on my table hard enough to crack it. "You embarrassed Draxus," she said. He embarrassed himself. I just supplied the fire extinguisher. "You mock the traditions of this academy." "I mock everything. It's kind of my whole personality. Ask anyone." "Well, ask anyone who's still conscious after meeting me." The cafeteria went dead silent. I could hear someone's claws tapping nervously against a tray 3 tables away. Threxa's eyes narrowed, and I understood, somewhere in the primal lizard brain part of me, that I had just poked something extremely large and extremely proud with a very sharp stick. "I challenge you," she said. "Formal duel. Academy rules." "Cool," I said, mostly because I'd run out of better words. "Can I finish my sandwich first?" Before the duel, there was the hunting survival exercise, which the faculty insisted on scheduling with what I can only assume was deliberate cruelty. The premise: predators hunt the weakest ranked student across a simulated wilderness environment. Guess who got ranked weakest? They released me into the forest terrain first, giving me a 2-minute head start, which is apparently considered generous in predator culture. I spent that 2 minutes doing 3 things: finding high ground, memorizing the terrain, and setting up a truly excessive number of tripwires using gear I'd basically stolen from the equipment shed. When the hunters arrived, expecting an easy chase, they instead found a series of increasingly elaborate humiliations. One of them got dropped into a camouflaged pit. Another got tangled in a net rigged from survival cord and hung upside down for the better part of an hour, loudly questioning his life choices in a language the universal translator rendered as mostly swearing. A third chased what he thought was me through the underbrush for 20 minutes before realizing it was my jacket tied to a stick, being dragged by fishing line. By the time the exercise ended, I hadn't been caught once, and 4 predator cadets required medical attention for injuries sustained entirely from their own overconfidence. The instructors did not know how to grade this. There was no column on the rubric for, technically didn't fight anyone and still won. The duel with Threxa happened 3 days later, in the academy's main arena, in front of what felt like the entire student body. I want to say I wasn't nervous. I was extremely nervous. But sarcasm is a very good coping mechanism, so I leaned into it. "Any last words?" Threxa said, cracking her knuckles, or the alien equivalent, which sounded like someone snapping a bundle of dry branches. "Yeah. Good luck catching me. I run on spite and poor decision-making." She came at me fast, faster than Draxus, faster than anything I'd trained against, and for a solid 30 seconds I was doing nothing but surviving, dodging, rolling, using the arena's pillars as cover while she demolished them one by one trying to reach me. My arms were shaking. My lungs burned. I was absolutely, 100%, not winning this through raw physical ability. But predators fight in bursts. Explosive, terrifying bursts, followed by brief recovery windows, because evolution built them for the sprint, not the marathon. Humans, on the other hand, are built to just keep going. Annoyingly, stupidly, persistently going, long after any sane creature would have quit. So I ran her in circles. Literally. I made her chase me around that arena for what felt like an hour, using every ounce of stubbornness I had, cracking jokes the entire time because apparently my brain processes mortal danger through comedy. "You're slowing down," I called out, somewhere around lap 15, dodging a swipe that took a chunk out of a support beam. Is this a bad time to mention I ran cross-country in high school? By the time her burst started coming slower, sloppier, I wasn't dodging out of desperation anymore. I was dodging on purpose, waiting. And when she finally overextended on a lunge, exhausted, breathing hard, I sidestepped and used her own momentum to put her on the ground, pinning the moment just long enough for the referee to call it. I didn't beat Threxa by being stronger. I beat her by being more annoying than she had energy to deal with, which honestly might be my greatest life skill. After that, something shifted at the academy. Predators who'd avoided me started requesting to be on my team for group exercises. Draxus, of all people, started saving me a seat at lunch, muttering something about how at least I was unpredictable, which counts for something. Threxa never quite forgave me, but she started nodding at me in hallways, which in Predator culture is apparently the equivalent of a warm hug. Headmaster Voron called me into his office near the end of the semester, paperwork for my correction and reassignment, still sitting untouched on his desk, gathering what I assumed was intentional dust. "The clerical error," he said slowly, like the words physically pained him, "may have been a cosmic joke with unfortunately excellent timing." "Are you saying I'm good at this?" "I am saying," he said, "that the students have started calling you the unkillable variable, and I have decided that reflects poorly on our combat training if I correct the enrollment error now." Translation: I'd become a mascot after all, just not the kind anyone expected. So here I am, still enrolled at a school built for apex predators, still technically a diplomatic paperwork error nobody's in a rush to fix, surrounded by 7-foot creatures who once considered me a snack and now consider me, at minimum, a very confusing colleague. My paperwork is still pending. I've checked. I've also stopped checking. Because honestly, watching a room full of galaxy-famous predators recalibrate their entire worldview because one mildly sarcastic human refused to die on schedule? That's not a mistake. That's just Tuesday.